The human's treasure turns out to be a buried alien girl, a sci-fi HFY story. Captain Jace Harper's boots thudded softly against the dusty ground of the barren planet. The blue skies above were stark and cloudless, a deep contrast to the endless stretches of golden sand that surrounded the crash site. His ship, the Vanguard, had made an emergency landing on this forsaken world after a series of malfunctioning systems. Now, it was up to him and his crew to salvage whatever they could and get back home. As Jace moved across the rugged terrain, his mind wandered to the strange, cryptic signal that had led them here in the first place. A signal unlike anything they had encountered in their travels. The coordinates had been buried deep in the data logs of a centuries-old military satellite, lost to time and nearly forgotten by the galactic archives. The distress beacon hadn't been human, nor from any known species in the galaxy. When the message had been decoded, it was clear that the signal was a call for help, a cry from someone or something lost, the kind of distress signal that, under normal circumstances, would be ignored. But Jace wasn't one to leave a call unanswered. The remnants of an ancient temple jutted out from the sand ahead of him, its stone walls weathered and cracked. It had been buried under millennia of desert sands, hidden from the prying eyes of civilizations. As Jace approached the structure, his scanning device beeped softly, signaling something unusual beneath the surface. A treasure? He thought. Perhaps some long-forgotten relic. That was the kind of discovery he had imagined when he first set out to find this signal. But what he found wasn't a treasure at all. The device led him to an underground chamber, dimly lit by the faint glow of alien technology embedded in the walls. In the center of the room, buried deep within a crystal-clear stasis field, lay the form of a girl. Her body was suspended in the field, her skin pale but intact, almost ethereal. Her long, silver hair framed her face, her closed eyes radiating an unnatural calm. She was unlike anything Jace had ever seen, a figure of beauty, but also something entirely foreign. "Is this what I've been looking for?" Jace whispered to himself, crouching down to inspect the girl more closely. The data from his scanner confirmed it. She was alien, her physiology unlike any species known to humanity. But what really struck him was her aura, an energy that radiated from her even though she was clearly unconscious. There was a strange connection, a subtle resonance that made Jace's pulse quicken, like the pull of an irresistible force. The stasis field hummed as Jace approached it, and without hesitation, he activated the terminal at the base of the chamber. The holographic interface flickered to life, and the stasis field began to dissipate, revealing the girl in her entirety. Her name, according to the data that flooded in, was Lyriath, a member of an ancient and powerful species known as the Elorians. Long thought to be extinct, they were known for their advanced technology, psychic abilities, and their unmatched longevity. Her stasis pod had been sealed away, possibly to protect her or to preserve her from whatever calamity had befallen her people. "She's not a treasure," Jace muttered to himself, his mind racing. "She's something far more important." The girl's eyes fluttered open, her gaze sharp and intelligent despite her apparent disorientation. For a moment, Jace thought she might be a threat, a powerful being with abilities that could outmatch any human. But instead, her lips parted in a faint smile, and her voice, soft yet commanding, spoke the words that would forever change Jace's understanding of the universe. "You found me," she said in perfect galactic common. "You're one of the humans, aren't you?" "Yes," Jace replied, his voice thick with awe and disbelief. "I didn't expect," he paused, unable to form the right words. "I thought you were a treasure, or maybe an artifact." Lyriath's smile deepened, and her eyes shimmered with what seemed like pride. "I am neither, Captain Jace Harper. I am a survivor, and I've been waiting for someone like you." "Waiting?" Jace asked, his mind spinning. "For me? Why me?" "Because, human," she said, rising slowly to her feet. "Your people will play a pivotal role in the survival of what is left of my kind, and you will need me whether you realize it now or not." Jace stared at her, every instinct telling him that this was the beginning of something far beyond anything he had ever imagined. This wasn't just about saving a planet, or finding a rare artifact. This was the discovery of an ancient, almost mythical species, and the birth of an entirely new chapter in the history of humanity. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm, and in that moment, Jace felt something stir deep inside him, a bond, a connection that transcended all logic and reason. You have stumbled upon the Elorian legacy, human, Lyriath said softly, and with it, the power to reshape the future. We are not alone in this galaxy, but you may be the ones who will lead the charge, if you are ready. Jace's heart raced as he realized the magnitude of what he had discovered. The galaxy was far more vast, more complex, and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But this was humanity's time. It was no longer about survival. It was about ascension. As Lyriath stood before him, her eyes glistening with ancient wisdom, Jace knew that humanity's destiny had just changed. The treasure he had discovered wasn't gold or technology, it was the beginning of a new era. One where humans would not just survive but thrive among the stars. And with Lyriath at his side, they would change the fate of the galaxy. As Jace absorbed the weight of Lyriath's words, he couldn't help but wonder just how far this new path would take humanity. The stasis pod hummed behind them, and the chamber felt colder now, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next step to unfold. He glanced at Lyriath, still reeling from the fact that something, had been lying in wait for him and his crew. "How do you know all of this?" Jace asked. "How could you possibly know that humanity would find you?" Lyriath's gaze softened, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable, almost like a child. "Our kind, the Elorians, have watched over the galaxy for eons. We planted seeds of our knowledge in countless civilizations, hoping one day that the right species would rise to inherit the mantle. You, humans, have the potential. You are more than your short history would suggest. You possess something other species lack, the ability to adapt, to grow beyond your limitations. That is why I've been waiting." Jace took a step closer, his curiosity overcoming his shock. "But why me? Why not someone else? There are plenty of other humans who could have come across your signal. Why the vanguard?" Her lips curved into a faint smile, and she stepped toward him, her eyes never leaving his. "It was never about the ship, Jace Harper. It was about you. I have seen it in the stars, the humans, driven by more than just survival, becoming something far greater than their beginnings. You are a part of that story. You, specifically, were chosen." Jace stood speechless for a moment, overwhelmed. A leader, a survivor, chosen by an alien race to usher in a new era for humanity? It was a lot to process. He looked at the delicate, otherworldly girl in front of him, struggling to understand what exactly she had meant by chosen. "Tell me more about these seeds you've planted," he said, his voice steady but inquisitive. "What kind of legacy are we talking about here?" Lyriath's expression darkened for a brief second. "Our legacy is one of knowledge, of power, and most importantly, of protection. The Elorians were once the stewards of peace, the keepers of balance in the galaxy. But we failed. Our people were wiped out in a great war that spanned centuries, leaving behind fragments of our technology and knowledge. The Elorian Council, our ruling body, had foreseen the coming destruction, but they could not stop it. In their final moments, they scattered the remnants of our civilization across the universe, hoping that someone would rise to take their place. That someone was you." Jace's mind whirled. If the Elorians had been the keepers of the galaxy's peace, that meant they had been powerful. Their technology advanced beyond even his comprehension. "And you expect humanity to take up that mantle? To become the new stewards of peace?" Lyriath nodded. "You already have the foundation. Your adaptability, your boundless curiosity, those traits are what make you capable. The Elorians were not perfect, but we saw something in humans, something that could reshape the stars." Jace's eyes narrowed as he digested this information. His crew had already encountered strange phenomena in deep space, alien relics, starships from races long dead, technologies that had no earthly explanation. Could all of it be connected to the Elorians? Was humanity really ready to handle the responsibility of such immense power? "We can't just accept this without understanding the risks," Jace said firmly. "This is bigger than anything we've ever dealt with before. If we're going to step into the Elorian legacy, we need to be prepared for what that means." Lyriath's eyes shimmered with ancient wisdom. "You are right, Captain, but time is not on our side. There are forces in the galaxy that will stop at nothing to prevent humanity from rising. The Elorians were hunted to extinction by those who sought to destroy our way of life. They will come for you too, unless you learn what we have left behind." "Where do we start?" Jace asked, his resolve strengthening. "How do we protect humanity, And how do we learn what the Elorians knew? Lyriath held up her hand, and a faint glow emitted from her fingertips. The walls of the chamber shifted, revealing hidden alcoves filled with relics and ancient texts. Holographic projections sprang to life, showing alien maps of the galaxy, star systems long lost to time, and blueprints for technology Jace could barely comprehend. "This is only the beginning," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "The Elorians encoded their knowledge into these relics, but it will not be easy to unlock. Some parts of it are locked away, protected by ancient wards and mechanisms designed to keep it from falling into the wrong hands." Jace took a deep breath, glancing back at the relics. He knew the stakes were higher than ever. It wasn't just about saving a planet or discovering ancient treasure. Humanity now had a chance to ascend, to become something more, to become the stewards of the galaxy. But with that power came grave responsibility. "We'll need time," Jace said, glancing at his crew, who had begun to gather at the entrance of the chamber, curiosity and uncertainty in their eyes. "But we'll do whatever it takes, for humanity and for the galaxy." Lyriath's smile returned, but this time, there was a new intensity in her eyes. "Time is something you may not have much of. You will be tested in ways you cannot imagine. The galaxy is watching you, Jace Harper. Your every move will determine the fate of billions." The Elorians left behind the legacy of peace, but they also left behind enemies who will do anything to prevent that peace from returning. Jace turned to face his crew, his expression hardening. "Prepare yourselves. We're about to embark on a journey that will define the future of humanity. But we need to act quickly, before those who oppose us catch up." As the crew made their preparations, Jace stood next to Lyriath, feeling a weight settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just the captain of a ship anymore. He was the leader of humanity's future. And with Lyriath's guidance, humanity's time to rise had come. But there was no turning back. The path ahead would be filled with danger, mystery, and challenges beyond anything they had known. And Jace Harper would lead them all into the unknown. As Jace and his crew began preparing for the unknown path that lay ahead, the weight of responsibility continued to settle heavier on his shoulders. The Vanguard hummed with activity as the crew readied their gear, analyzed the relics, and mapped out the coordinates Lyriath had given them. The crew's initial disbelief had shifted to curiosity and, for some, a deep sense of awe. They were no longer just a group of spacefaring humans. They were part of something far greater than any of them could have imagined. Lyriath stood apart from the hustle and bustle, silently observing the crew as they worked. Her ethereal presence seemed to draw the attention of everyone in the room, but she said little. Instead, her focus was on the relics, her mind undoubtedly racing with thoughts and memories of the Elorians and the ancient knowledge she now carried. Jace approached her, his boots making no sound as he moved across the metallic floor of the ship. "Are you all right?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Lyriath met his gaze, her eyes as ancient and timeless as the galaxy itself. "I am adapting," she said softly. "It has been a long time since I've been in contact with your kind, but I can already sense your potential. Jace Harper, you are more than you realize." He nodded, feeling a mix of pride and fear. The pressure of being the first human to truly stand at the forefront of this vast new galaxy weighed heavily on him. He had always known space exploration would be filled with uncertainty and danger, but this was a whole new level. "We're ready," Jace said, his voice firm. "Where do we go next?" Lyriath gestured toward the glowing holographic star map now projected in the ship's command center. The galaxy stretched out before them, dotted with countless stars, some familiar, others unknown. "We follow the path of the Elorians. The legacy they left behind is scattered across the stars, ancient temples, libraries, and beacons hidden in the most remote parts of the galaxy. They were designed to be found by the ones chosen to carry on our mission. You must follow the markers, unlock their secrets, and claim the knowledge within." Jace studied the map, tracing the path with his finger. It was a sprawling network of coordinates, some located in the core of known space, others far beyond the edges of the galaxy. The task was daunting, and the risks were impossible to ignore. "And the enemies you spoke of," Jace said, his mind already racing ahead to the potential dangers. "Who are they? What are we up against?" Lyriath's expression darkened, and for a moment, she seemed to look beyond him, as if gazing into the farthest reaches of space. "The enemies of the Elorians are many. You will face those who seek to prevent your rise, to keep humanity from realizing its full potential. The Jalan are one such faction, a ruthless race of conquerors who feed on chaos. They were the ones who annihilated the Elorians in the final war. They are still out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Jace frowned. And they'll come after us. Yes, she confirmed, her voice steady but laced with an undeniable edge of warning. They know the Elorians are not truly gone. They can sense the remnants of our power, and they will stop at nothing to prevent the return of our legacy. Jace clenched his fists at his sides. He had heard of the Jalan, stories of their brutal campaigns, their relentless wars, and their ability to tear through entire star systems with terrifying efficiency. The thought of facing them in battle sent a chill down his spine, but he also knew that this was no longer a choice. Then we'll be ready for them, Jace said, his voice unwavering. We won't let anyone destroy what the Elorians left behind, not when humanity has a chance to rise. Lyriath's gaze softened, and she placed a hand gently on his shoulder. I believe you, Jace Harper, but know this, the Jalan are not the only threat you will face. There are other factions, some older than even the Elorians themselves. You must be cautious, for there are forces beyond your understanding at play. Jace took a deep breath, his resolve firming. I'll take that into consideration, but we'll keep moving forward. We can't waste time. With that, he turned and walked toward the ship's command center, where his crew was waiting. The team had gathered around the main holo display, studying the coordinates Lyriath had provided. Their faces were a mix of determination and fear, but Jace could see that they were all ready for whatever came next. All right, team, Jace said, his voice carrying over the room. We're headed for the first Elorian site. Lyriath, do you have the coordinates? Lyriath stepped forward, nodding. Yes, Captain. The first temple is located on the moon of an uncharted planet. It is a place of great significance, one of the earliest Elorian settlements. The knowledge you will find there will set the foundation for what is to come. Good, Jace said, glancing at his crew. Get ready. We leave in 20 minutes. We don't know what's waiting for us out there, but we'll be prepared for anything. The crew nodded, some murmuring quietly among themselves as they prepared for the next phase of their journey. Jace felt the weight of his new role as their leader. He wasn't just responsible for the Vanguard and its mission anymore. He was responsible for the survival of humanity and the future of the galaxy. As the countdown began, Jace turned back to Lyriath, who had remained standing by the edge of the command center, her expression unreadable. He walked over to her one last time before departure. Are you sure this is the right path? He asked, his voice low, seeking reassurance. Lyriath met his gaze. I have seen it, Captain. The Elorian's legacy is the key. You must follow it. The path is fraught with danger, but there is no other way. Jace exhaled slowly, his mind now clear. Then let's make sure humanity is ready. Let's show the galaxy what we're made of. With that, the final preparations were made. The Vanguard's engines roared to life, its hull vibrating with the intensity of the upcoming jump to FTL speeds. As the ship soared through space, Jace felt the weight of history on his shoulders. He was no longer just a captain on a routine mission. He was the leader of humanity's future, and the first steps had already been taken. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. But humanity was about to take its place among the stars. The Vanguard surged forward into the void, its engines propelling the ship faster than the speed of light. Jace Harper stood at the helm, hands gripping the controls, his mind racing. The Elorian legacy, a powerful force that could shape the future of the galaxy, was now within their grasp. But as they made their way toward the uncharted moon, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was watching, waiting for them to make their move. The crew worked in tense silence, each member occupied with their tasks, eyes flicking to the holographic displays as the ship rocketed through the darkness of space. Lyriath remained in the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the stars, as if sensing something beyond the immediate. Captain, Lieutenant Mara Quinn's voice broke through the stillness, her tone laced with concern. We're approaching the coordinates. Sensors are picking up an anomaly. There's something off about the moon's atmosphere. Jace's brow furrowed. Explain. Mara adjusted her screen, zooming in on the readings. There's an energy signature emanating from the moon's surface, almost like a field of interference. It's blocking our ability to get a clear scan of the terrain. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. Could it be Elorian tech? Jace asked, eyes narrowing. Possibly, Mara replied, her voice uncertain, but it's hard to tell. We'll need to get closer to investigate. Jace nodded. Take us in. Proceed with caution. The Vanguard adjusted its course, slowly closing the distance to the moon. As they neared, the interference grew stronger, and the ship's sensors began to flicker and malfunction. Jace's grip tightened on the control panel, his instincts on high alert. All hands, brace for impact, Jace ordered. We're going in. The moon loomed larger on the viewscreen, a desolate, rocky world with craggy mountains and deep, shadowed valleys. It was eerily quiet, the atmosphere thick with an unnatural tension. The ship's hull groaned as they entered the atmosphere, but the Vanguard held steady. Incoming turbulence, Mara called out, her fingers dancing over her console. We're going to need to adjust trajectory. Hold tight. Jace nodded, his eyes focused on the rapidly approaching surface. His thoughts raced. If this was an Elorian site, it would be heavily protected, perhaps even by defenses they didn't fully understand. The interference field, combined with the strange energy signature, suggested that the site was more than just a temple or library. It could be a place of immense power. The ship's engines groaned as the turbulence intensified, shaking the crew in their seats. A moment later, a violent shudder ran through the ship as it slammed into the surface of the moon with a resounding impact. The lights flickered, and the entire vessel was thrown off balance, but the ship held together. Captain, we've landed, Mara exclaimed, her voice strained from the impact. Jace took a deep breath and pushed away the knot of fear that had formed in his chest. Status report. How bad is it? Structural integrity is holding, Mara replied. We've taken some damage, but nothing we can't fix. We've landed near the energy source, but we're still getting interference. It'll be difficult to get accurate readings without stepping outside. Jace turned toward Lyriath, who had appeared at the back of the command center, her presence as calming as ever. Lyriath, he said, his voice firm. What do you sense? Is this the place? Lyriath's eyes closed as she extended her senses outward. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, with a soft exhale, she opened her eyes, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Yes, Captain, this is the place. The Elorian knowledge is buried here, hidden beneath layers of protection. But be warned, the energy field is not just a defense mechanism. It's part of the test, designed to see if you are truly worthy. Worthy? Jace repeated, his brow furrowing. What does that mean? What kind of test? Lyriath's expression grew serious. The Elorians did not leave their power for just anyone to wield. This site was built not only to store knowledge, but also to protect it from those who would misuse it. Only those who prove themselves worthy can access what lies within. Jace felt a surge of determination. Then we'll prove ourselves. Be careful, Captain, Lyriath warned. The test is not one of strength. It is a trial of intellect, of heart, of conviction. If you fail, the consequences may be dire. Jace met her gaze, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. He had led his crew through countless challenges before, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of humanity and the galaxy. We're ready, he said firmly. I'll lead the way. The airlock hissed open, and Jace led his team into the moon's barren landscape. The ground was rocky, the air thin and dry, but the sense of something ancient and powerful pulsed beneath their feet. Lyriath stayed close to Jace, her senses attuned to the environment around them, her eyes scanning the horizon. They walked for what felt like hours, the surface of the moon stretching out endlessly before them. The energy signature grew stronger as they neared the source, and the interference from the atmosphere became even more intense. Jace could feel it, the oppressive weight of the unknown pressing against his every step. Finally, they reached a massive structure, an Elorian temple, partially buried beneath centuries of dust and rock. The walls were carved with intricate symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness, their meaning hidden from the human eye. At the entrance stood a set of massive, ornately designed doors, sealed shut by an energy barrier that flickered intermittently. Lyriath, Jace said, turning to her, can you open it? She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the energy field surrounding the door. The door will not open easily, she said softly. Only when the test begins will the barrier lower. The challenge will be inside. Jace nodded, He took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever trial awaited them. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, was on the line. He would not fail. With a deep, resonating hum, the doors of the temple began to glow, and the energy field flickered before dissipating entirely. The test had begun. The doors of the Elorian temple creaked open, their massive stone surfaces sliding apart with an eerie, slow movement. As they opened, a rush of cool, stale air swept over the crew, filled with the scent of ancient dust and forgotten time. The darkness inside the temple seemed impenetrable, and even the brightest lights of the Vanguard's crew equipment failed to fully illuminate the vast expanse within. Jace stood at the threshold, his heart pounding. This was it, the first real step into the unknown. The door had opened without warning, and now the challenge Lyria had warned about awaited them inside. He glanced at his crew, who stood just behind him, a mixture of anxiety and determination on their faces. "Stay alert," Jace ordered, his voice steady but tinged with the same apprehension that gripped him. "We don't know what to expect inside." Lyria stepped forward, her presence quiet yet commanding, her eyes scanning the darkened temple. "I can sense it," she said, her voice low and almost reverent. "The energy here is unlike anything I've ever encountered. It's ancient, but it is also alive, waiting." Jace nodded and signaled for his team to move forward. The temple stretched out in front of them, its stone corridors adorned with faded Elorian murals and carvings, each one depicting scenes of great significance, battles, peace, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Some images were difficult to comprehend, showing alien figures standing in places Jace couldn't quite place. Others were clearly Elorian, their forms tall and graceful, exuding an aura of power and wisdom. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew heavier, the shadows thicker. It felt as though the very walls were watching them, testing them, just as Lyriath had said. At the center of the temple, they reached an enormous chamber, its ceiling lost in the shadows above. In the middle of the room stood a pedestal, surrounded by intricate carvings, and atop it, a glowing orb, pulsating with a soft, blue light. The energy emanating from it was palpable, the same energy they had detected outside, now amplified and contained within the orb itself. Jace's instincts screamed at him to approach cautiously. "What is that?" he asked, looking to Lyriath for guidance. Lyriath's expression grew even more serious. "The orb is the core of the Elorian knowledge repository. It contains the sum of what remains of our civilization, the history, technology, and power we once held, but it will not yield easily. The test is here, in this room. You must prove your worth to access its secrets." The crew stood silent, watching the orb. For a moment, there was no sound, only the faint hum of energy. Then, suddenly, the air shifted, the lights flickered, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The symbols on the walls began to glow, lighting up the chamber in a pulse of brilliant colors, casting strange, otherworldly shadows across the crew. Jace stepped forward, his boots echoing in the chamber. As he approached the pedestal, the orb's glow brightened, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and move in the corners of the room. A voice, ancient and resonant, filled the air. "Who seeks to claim the knowledge of the Elorians?" The voice intoned, its tone deep and foreboding. "Who dares awaken the power of the stars?" Jace's heart raced. The voice was not human. It was something far older, a presence that seemed to come from both the walls and the air around them. He felt its weight pressing down on him, but he stood firm. "It is I, Jace Harper, captain of the Vanguard and the representative of humanity," Jace said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We seek knowledge to protect our people, to guide us toward a future among the stars. We do not seek power for its own sake, but to rise to our destiny." The orb's light flickered again, and the voice responded. "Many have come before you, claiming the same, but few have understood the price of that which they seek. The Elorian legacy is not a gift, nor is it a weapon, it is a responsibility, a great burden. Only those who possess the strength to bear it may inherit its power." Jace felt a surge of determination. The weight of his words, the gravity of the moment, anchored him. He knew this wasn't just a test of knowledge or strength, it was a test of conviction, of humanity's readiness to rise. He wasn't just standing here for himself, for his crew, or even for Lyriath. He was standing here for the future of the entire human race. I am ready, Jace said, his voice firm, unwavering. Humanity is ready. We will bear the burden. We will protect the knowledge, and we will use it wisely. We do not take this lightly. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. The orb glowed brighter, and the voice spoke again, this time with a tone that carried both challenge and approval. Very well. The test begins now. Only those worthy of the Elorian legacy may proceed. Solve the riddles of the past, and the future shall be yours. Fail, and the knowledge will remain forever sealed, lost to you and your kind. A series of glowing symbols appeared in the air, hovering above the pedestal. They shifted and rearranged themselves, forming intricate patterns and shapes, their meaning indecipherable to human eyes. The challenge had begun. Jace felt a rush of anxiety, but he quickly pushed it aside. He wasn't alone in this. His crew was with him, and Lyriath's guidance would help him unlock what they needed to know. Together, they would solve the riddles. Gather round, Jace said, his voice steady. Let's figure this out. We're doing this together. The crew gathered around the pedestal, staring at the glowing symbols that filled the air. Lyriath stood nearby, her gaze intense as she studied the shifting patterns. Jace could feel the pressure mounting, but he kept his focus, his mind sharp. One of the symbols seemed to shift, pulling his attention. It was a pattern, a map of sorts, with coordinates that mirrored those of a distant star system. Jace traced the symbol with his finger, his mind clicking into place. He had seen something like this before. It was an ancient Elorian system of navigation, one used to plot the most secure paths across the stars. Look here, Jace said, pointing to the map-like pattern. These coordinates, this is a way to unlock the next piece. It's a key to understanding the Elorian star charts. Lyriath nodded in agreement, her voice quiet but filled with reverence. This is the first of many trials, but you are on the right path. Captain, solve this, and the next challenge will reveal itself. Jace looked back at his crew, their faces filled with determination. They weren't just here to collect knowledge, they were here to shape the future, to take their place among the stars, and Jace knew, deep down, that they were ready for whatever came next. The trial had begun, and humanity would rise or fall on the strength of their resolve. And Jace Harper was determined to see it through to the end. The vanguard inched closer to the Star of Ascension, the ancient ships in orbit surrounding them like silent sentinels, their dark silhouettes contrasting against the ethereal glow emanating from the planet below. The energy field that enveloped the planet shimmered in the darkness of space, a barrier that seemed impenetrable yet inviting, as if it were daring the crew to enter. Jace Harper stood at the helm, his hands steady on the controls but his mind racing. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the gravity of the decision they were about to make. They had come so far, past the unknown worlds, the ancient riddles, and the trials of the Elorian temple. But this was it, the final challenge. Captain, Mara Quinn's voice broke through the tension, her eyes flicking to the view screen. We're being hailed by one of the ships in orbit. They're sending a transmission. Jace's gaze snapped to the screen, where a strange, glowing symbol appeared, almost like a form of communication from the ancient vessels. The alien ships had taken notice of their arrival. The glowing symbol on the screen shifted, and a voice crackled through the static. Human ship, you have arrived at the threshold. The voice intoned, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to reverberate within the very walls of the vanguard. This is the domain of the Elorians. To proceed is to risk all that you know. You are not welcome here by those who guard the sacred knowledge. Turn back. Jace felt the weight of the warning in the voice, but his resolve only strengthened. Humanity had come too far to turn back now. We are not here to steal or destroy, he replied, his voice steady. We seek knowledge, not power. We seek the truth about the Elorian legacy and what lies within the Star of Ascension. If you stand in our way, we will defend ourselves, but we do not seek conflict. For a moment, the voice on the other end remained silent. Then, it spoke again, but this time with a different tone, one that carried a subtle note of respect. Your words carry the weight of truth. You seek knowledge, not dominion. Very well, the trial begins. Without warning, the energy field around the planet flickered, and the ships in orbit shifted, aligning themselves into a formation that created an opening, a path through the energy barrier. The path was narrow, twisting, and fraught with invisible dangers. The alien ships seemed to pulse with energy, as if they were preparing for something. Get ready, Jace commanded. We're going in. The Vanguard slowly maneuvered into the opening, its hull vibrating as they passed through the energy field. The air inside the cockpit seemed to thrum with power, and Jace felt the weight of the moment. This was the final step. If they succeeded, humanity would gain access to the Elorian legacy, the knowledge that could elevate them to unimaginable heights. If they failed, everything could be lost. The ship passed through the barrier, and the energy field collapsed behind them, sealing off their only route of escape. The space inside the barrier was unlike anything they had ever seen, alien and yet familiar. The stars above them seemed to pulse with life, and the distant planet below shimmered with a strange, radiant glow. "Look at that," Mara whispered, her voice filled with awe. The planet's surface was covered in vast, sprawling cities, their architecture unlike anything human technology had ever conceived. Massive structures reached up to the sky, floating in mid-air, supported by the strange, unseen forces that pulsed from the planet itself. The Elorians had clearly mastered the art of living in harmony with their environment, creating a world that was both a marvel and a mystery. As the Vanguard descended toward the planet, the alien ships followed, forming a protective escort around them. The planet's atmosphere shimmered with a strange iridescence, and Jace could feel the pull of the planet's gravity tugging at the ship. The ground below seemed to be alive with energy, as if the very surface was vibrating in response to their arrival. "We're entering the planet's atmosphere," Lieutenant Cole said, his eyes focused on the controls. "I'm detecting strange readings, energy signatures unlike anything we've encountered. It's like the planet itself is alive." "Stay sharp," Jace replied, his voice steady. "This is where the real test begins." The ship descended further, passing through layers of clouds and mist. Below, they could see the remnants of what was once a great civilization, massive ruins scattered across the surface of the planet, their stone walls overgrown with strange alien flora. The ruins seemed to be everywhere, stretching out across the landscape like a vast, crumbling network. As the ship neared the surface, the alien ships surrounding them began to disperse, taking up positions around the ancient ruins. The Vanguard settled gently onto the ground, its landing gear touching down with a soft hiss. The moment the ship landed, the silence was overwhelming. The crew remained still, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. "We're here," Jace said quietly. "Let's move out." The crew gathered their gear and made their way toward the exit. Lyriath, as always, was at the front, her senses attuned to the surroundings. The air outside was cool, but there was an unnatural stillness to it, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. "Stay close," Jace said, his voice low. "The moment we step out there, we're in their domain. We'll follow the path they've set for us." As they exited the Vanguard, Jace felt a strange energy course through the air, an invisible current that seemed to hum with power. The alien flora around them moved in strange, fluid patterns, as if responding to their presence. Every step they took seemed to echo with a distant, ancient resonance. The ruins around them were magnificent, yet haunting, monuments to a long-lost civilization. Massive statues of Elorians stood tall, their features serene yet unreadable, as though they had been frozen in time. The path they followed led them through a series of corridors and chambers, each one filled with more ruins, more statues, and more signs of a civilization that had reached the peak of its power. Eventually, they reached the heart of the ruins, a massive structure, its shape unlike any architecture Jace had ever seen. The building was made of materials that seemed to shift and shimmer as if they were alive. At its center, a massive door stood, covered in glowing symbols and intricate carvings. The symbols pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, and Jace could feel the energy from the door seeping into his bones. Lyriath stepped forward, her expression filled with reverence. "This is it," she whispered, "the Elorian heart, the center of their knowledge, the place where they stored the power of the stars." Jace felt the weight of the moment. They had reached the final destination, but the trial was far from over. The door stood before them, a barrier that would test their resolve, their intellect, and their understanding of what it meant to wield the Elorian legacy. With a deep breath, Jace stepped forward, his hand reaching for the door. The trial had reached its final stage, and the future of humanity rested on what came next.